Peace, family. There's a version of racism that's going around that's very detrimental to our people. And the sad part about it is being pushed by our own people. But see, this version of racism that they're trying to put into the minds of the youth is not the same version of racism that we had to deal with. See, this version of racism is a version where it's individual, where it's one person, where it's not systemic. You see, the racism that black people had to deal with did not just impact that one individual person. It impacted the vast majority of black people. And it was continuous. It was generational. The version of racism that white people want to say that black people are towards them lacks all the brutal elements that we had to deal with. There was no terrorism. There was no generational systemic oppression. There was no raping, pillaging. There was no lynching. There was no cannibalizing. There was no systemic racism that white people can ever say that they experienced at the hands of blacks. But yet, this is the racism they want to say that is just as dangerous. You see, the racism that they experience in a Walmart, in a Dollar General, or Rite Aid, is nothing compared to the racism that black people had to experience. You see, when black people experienced racism, it was the separation from their basic privileges, human dignity, and liberties. White people can never attest to that. They can never sit up here and say that black people denied them access to vital, essential needs and services. They had to go without. No white person, no white people could ever say that. There's never been a point in time where white people lived in a land where the businesses, industries, institutions, the courts were all owned and controlled by black people. And they had to live by these decisions. There's no white people that ever had that. And the sad part is some of our own people are perpetuating this nonsense. They want to say that racism is just attached to feelings. He didn't like me because I was dating this person. They didn't want me to marry this guy. What if a black person opened up a business and didn't want to hire white people? Wouldn't that be racist? Of course not. That's not racism. And why? Because white people already have a place to go. You see, the fact of the matter is this. When it comes to racism, you need two vital elements. You need a desire and you need a mechanism. You have to want to be racist. You have to want to do something to this person that you don't like, and you need a means and able to do it. And to sustain this racism, so it don't just stop with this one person. You need a necessity. You need this person or these people to keep coming back to you. When I sit up here and listen to these influencers, especially these young ones, I'm listening to this one girl, and she's talking about how her level of understanding of racism, is more accepted among the younger population. Young people can understand it, but I can't convince anybody older because they just not going. They just don't understand it. Look, it's like math. If a child prodigy come to me telling me that he know trigonometry, and I'm 50-something years old, even if I don't know trigonometry, there is a consistent history attached to mathematics, where I can now check his calculations and see if they're right. And every civilization that uses mathematics, I could then compare that to everybody else, and they should all be the same. If these new so-called child prodigies that's coming up with some new interpretation of racism, but it don't translate to what black older generations believe racism to be, it's not the older generation that you got a problem with. It's your mathematics. You coming up with some type of new math that ain't nobody ever heard of. Racism is not something that just pertains to just one person. It's best applied to a vast majority of people. Having individual success in a racist society does not end racism. You cannot, because you become rich, that does not mean that you are immune to racism. It's simple as that. You just happen to navigate through the cracks and crevices. But the vast majority of the people are suffering from it. How many black people actually deny white people anything? How many black people actually hold ownership and control over the needs of white people? No white person could ever admit to that. You know, the racism that black people suffer from compared to whites can never be the same. Here you have images of white children at Ku Klux Klan rallies, learning these racist ways, being brought there by their brothers, their mothers, their fathers. And then today, these children are owners of businesses and industries. Look at Jerry Jones for the Dallas Cowboys. He's the owner. They had a 14-year-old picture of him at a Klans rally. Now today, he's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, and he's one of the only, I believe it's the only team in the NFL that has never had a black executive. They never had a black head coach. Is that just a coincidence? How many other business owners, doctors, lawyers, judges was in attendance at these Klan rallies? And using these same racist ways today. You see, these influencers, the sad part is they're desperate. They'll sit up here and use an example as like to say, what if a black person become a judge and he uses his position as a judge to be racist towards white people? Wouldn't that be racism? How often could this judge do this to white people? These white people that go to this court, do you think a crooked judge is going to start illegally holding and arresting or sentencing white people when they got lawyers sitting right there next to them? And these white people most likely ain't got no court-appointed lawyer. They got their own lawyer that they're paying specifically to keep them out of jail. You think these high-powered lawyers, the Figers, the Mike Moores, the Johnny Cochrans, you think these high-priced lawyers are going to allow a judge to sit up here and violate the law to lock up their people? Of course not. But this is the desperation, and this is the level of understanding that a lot of these influencers want to put out there, just to justify their white counterpart, because I believe they are sympathetic to our oppressor. Then you have them say, you know, well, black people, it's black people problem. This, we don't do nothing for ourselves. We don't practice group economics. If we do that, we won't have a race. Let me say this: there's no race of people that has practiced group economics more than black people. In this country alone, we had over 60 communities that black people have built on their own. And white people have came and either destroyed them or severely crippled them. Imagine the impact had white people had not done that. Had they allowed blacks to stay in their communities and just left them alone, would this black judge have to be in this white system to do anything to white people? Of course not. He would be in a black community. You see, and within these black communities, out of all 60 plus of them, you've never heard of no internal strife, no protests, no boycotts, no demonstrations. It was peace and prosperity. They were so peaceful, they didn't even have a means to defend their own communities. And this would allow white people to come in there and do what they do in the first place. They destroy everything good and kind. So by you sitting up here saying that black people don't practice group economics, but totally ignore the ways that whites have destroyed our group economics, it's pitiful. It's sad. Now I'm listening to this other influencer. He's saying that anybody can be racist. And then his example is, if a person says that I don't like you because of the color of your skin, that's racism. That is not racism. That's bigotry. Or prejudice. This is not the racism. I wish black people history was filled with this version of racism, where white people just didn't like us for the color of our skin, but were incapable or not empowered to act on it, and we were able to go live our lives. White people, they never had to drive through town at night for fear of being seen by its black residents. White people, they never had to defecate and urinate on the side of the road because they were scared to stop at a convenience store or gas station to ask to use the bathroom. White people, they never had to go through the back of a building just to gain entry, even though their names was on the marquee to entertain. This is what our black people had to go through. Sammy Davis Jr. had to go through the back door to go entertain and sing and dance for the people that they was paying him to be there. He was coming there with Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. White people ain't never experienced no stuff like that. White people ain't never had to experience racism to the point where their ancestors hung from trees by rope while their dead bodies, the stench of their dead bodies smelled the countryside. White people don't know anything about racism, where they was hung and lynched, burned alive, cut into little pieces, and cannibalized in front of thousands of black onlookers with their children in attendance. And everybody that was there watching had smiles on their faces. White people, if you believe that the racism that you experience in the day in these convenience stores, in these Church's Chickens and these Popeyes and these Waffle Houses is true racism, you would have never survived real racism. And the saddest part of this all is you see the turmoil between blacks and whites. It's consistent. It has never been a peaceful coexistence. And black people have left over and over again, created independent means to sustain their own way of life. And white people, with their insatiable obsession with black people, you would go tear it down and force them right back into your home, right back into your communities, right back into your schools, your businesses, and then complain about them when they get there. So how do these influencers describe that mentality to these white people? You didn't have to kick us out. We left. And you forced us back. And now today, you talk about black people doing for themselves. And black people still have this fear of doing anything self-sufficient, self-sustaining. Because they fear white people are going to do what they have always historically done: attack and destroy anything prosperous for black people. You see, the racism that white people complain about is nothing compared to what blacks had to go through. Blacks live constantly up under the ownership and control of all the businesses and institutions that sustain our way of life. We have to seek permission and allowance to do anything. We have to meet the standards set by other people. And this vulnerability does not just apply just to white people. It's to whites, Arabs, Asians, Chaldeans, anybody. There isn't another race of people on the planet that's losing a wink of sleep watching what's happening to black people. Not one of them. And when we went off and built for ourselves, we crippled the ability for white people to oppress us. Because once we do for ourselves, that eliminates the need for us to have whites do for us. And it's take us out of their ownership and control. If white people owned McDonald's and black people were going to McDonald's, they have the need for us to be racist towards us. But if black people built their own version of McDonald's and called it Burger King, now we go into a totally different place. We can do for ourselves now. Now you are not able to do anything to us now because we have our own means. And if we do this over and over again, they create Pepsi, we create Coke. They create Ford Motor Company, we create General Motors. That's how you treat. That's how you cure. That's how you end racism. You do it the natural way, providing for your own essential needs and services. This is what these influencers are not going to tell you. They want you to be satisfied with some artificial means to treat racism. That's in the ownership and control of the very disease that's infecting you. How do you suffer from a virus and then go to that virus for a cure? You think this virus is going to sit up and tell you how to destroy it? How to weaken it? How to lose its grip? Self-sufficiency ends racism. And like I said, I know we have been to the point where we had done this before many times. But not one time have I ever heard of a story where black people put up a full effort to defend these communities, where they took up arms and fought. And one of the most famous communities that was destroyed was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. And when white people came to tear the town down, you had a vast majority of the black residents, the black men, go to the Oklahoma Police Department to complain. So while you got white invaders tearing down your community, you go to white institutions to protect it. They hold these people here in the jails, which weakened your community. See, this is the unnatural way to defend your community, the unnatural way to end racism, by going to the very same people that's causing this affliction. And the sad part is, it's not just these young so-called influencers that's perpetuating this nonsense. It's these old organizations as well. You get these National Action Networks, these NAACPs, Urban League, whatever they are called it. When these white institutions mistreat you, they'll protest, march, and all that, and take you right back to the same people that was mistreating you in the first place. And we sitting up here paying for this nonsense. You paying for your oppressors to oppress you all over again. Haven't we done this before? Isn't insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? What part of peace and prosperity has whites ever promoted? What society exists today that you can go see and touch that whites have created for all people? We have been consistently at the bottom of every statistical category that measures the quality of life. This is the impact of living in a racist society, a racist system. White people can never say that they were at the bottom of any of all these statistical categories for as long as we've been there, all at the hands of black people. So we need to stop this nonsense, this cycle of you mistreat and we come back. You mistreat and we come back. We have to stop this. And you know, one of the influencers was talking about how she took a guy called her live or whatever she was doing, and was saying that black people need to have a new mindset. So she was saying, well, what mindset is that? So he was unable to articulate exactly what he meant by a new black mindset. And once she picked up on this, she pounded it into the ground. She kept trying to force him to say what he was trying to say, and to try to make this guy look bad because he couldn't get it out of his mouth. But see, the thing is, the new mindset that black people need to have is that this system was never meant for us. It wasn't then, it's not now, and it never will be meant for black people. The only way black people can do anything in this society, in this world, and be able to sustain and rest comfortable in it, is to do for themselves. We have to end the cycle of this systemic racism, this generational racism. We cannot have white people in charge of birthing our children into the world, educating our youth when they are at their most impressionable. We put them in the hands of either white people or white institutions. We cannot have white people financing our own goals and ambitions. We cannot have white people owning our own essential needs and services, businesses, industries, and institutions. We cannot have white people deciding our court, ruling over our courts, passing down punishments and rewards as they see fit, with no opposition. With no opposition. Can you imagine that? White people, they never lived in the land where they had to suffer from rules from the courts that's owned by black people. And it's clear that they're being punished disproportionately. That's the mindset that black people need to have. That's the vision that we need to have as a people. And we need leadership that's going to get us there. And when it comes to that, I'm that guy. So I'm in this video here. And if you like this message, if you like this content, and if you like this pressure that I put on our oppressor, put a little pressure on that follow, subscribe, and share button, and catch me in my next video. Ashe.